First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for coming this morning. I'm here currently with Randy Bean, the president of the FOP, and I'm the president of the International Association of Firefighters, Local 136 for Dayton. It's been brought to our attention, and we've obtained the documentation from the city of Dayton, raises that the executives, the mid-managers, and managers of the organizations have recently provided themselves. This is rather disturbing to both of us, and I'm sure our other co-workers across the city. The financial crisis that they said they had. The firefighters specifically have made concessions, giving up our raises, turning back in furlough days or equal to furlough days, our holiday pay, in order to keep apparatus from being taken out of service, to keep our firefighters from being laid off, to keep our district chiefs from being demoted, and from hiring part-time employees to take the positions of our full-time firefighters. Our fellow police officers were handed, 11 of our brothers were handed layoff papers, and to last second received a grant saving them from their layoffs. Quite honestly, at a time when the city is crying budget constraints and asking us to make concessions, we feel it's inappropriate, it's irresponsible, and quite honestly, it's disturbing that they would now provide themselves with retroactive raises, some of which go back to January of this year, including the city manager that is now gone, both assistant city managers, and the majority of, if not all, the directors within the organization. Again, they violated their own personnel policies and procedures by providing themselves what appears to be a step raise, which the executives, managers, and mid-managers do not receive. All their raises are based on merit and promotional raises. We have the documentation. What's even more disturbing is just a week ago, the chief of fire advised our executive board that there were going to be more cuts next year, more apparatus taken out of service, one, possibly two more fire apparatus swung out of service in order to meet the budget constraints. 2 weeks ago, I met with the new incoming city manager, Tim Reardon, in which he advised us that the revenue for the city of Dayton in 2010 would mirror the levels that we received in 1997. So not to drag this out any further, I just think it is atrocious to see that an organization, its managers, would then turn around and provide themselves with a 1.19% increase that is retroactive for some of them all the way back to January.
When you say 1.19% increase, how much is it? How much are you talking about in cash?
It appears, and there were some of our P1s or the documentation that was requested missing, but as the documentation that we had, it looked like upwards of $250,000 of what we just were given. So, in terms of, to us in the fire service, that keeps fire apparatus in service on a daily basis, even if it's cost to staff it with overtime. And that's important to us because time is critical when we're talking about serving citizens.
So this is money that, went to lay off people because they couldn't pay their salaries, take your raises away. This is money that could have gone towards you guys that they're using for themselves.
Absolutely. I believe that the FOP and the IAFF and our DPSU brothers and sisters have taken the budget situation rather seriously. And we've made concessions and tried to make things hard on ourselves in order to keep the services available to the citizens. So the money that they're providing themselves are actually taken away from what we gave up to keep the services available to the citizens of Dayton, which is police officers on the street, firefighters and their apparatus, and the street workers that we have working across the city on a daily basis.
Can you explain again what exactly you guys agreed to give up? You mentioned furlough days. Just walk me through that again.
I can speak to the fire side of it. The firefighters gave up our annual raise that was negotiated in contract negotiations almost 3 years ago. We gave up equivalent to the furlough days that they asked for, which is 4 furlough days. We gave up 4 holiday pays, and we negotiated to actually have some of our lower ranking officers and firefighters work out of classification to try to offset the overtime that's created when we have people out. So we believe, honestly, that we put ourselves in harm's way by putting less experienced people in positions in order to save the city money. And we've done this through the end of our contract, which is November of 2010. So we've made a commitment to the city for long term, in my personal opinion, to try to help them out with their budget issues. I don't see them helping themselves out.
Do you feel deceived?
Deceived is put lightly. I feel this is a slap in the face of every city employee that either welcomed or had a problem with taking their raise away from them. And it's even more than that. They made concessions to try to help the citizens of the city. And with the issues that we're facing across the state and the nation with the recession, we're being impacted as a fire department. Great. Trotwood is downsizing their fire department. Harrison Township's having a problem staffing. Moraine's closing a firehouse. And what that means to us is we can't rely on them for mutual aid. We can't rely on them coming in to help us when we don't have the resources. So we're continuing to shrink or downsize, as the city says it, and we have little help coming from the outside like we were used to in the past.
Was there something in particular with Rashad Young, I heard after he left, may have given himself a raise?
And I'll try not to speak poorly of the city manager because he was a very good person, but as he left, he also received a raise that was retroactive to January 1. And I believe it was this media corps that reported publicly that the city manager made an announcement that he would take zero, and all of his managers and mid-managers would take zero as well. And as he left, he too received a nice bump in pay, along with all of the city administration that worked side by side with him.
When did they vote to do this, do you know?
The P1s, which is the technical term they use to process the paperwork within the organization, was filed between September 10th and September 18th and approved, and a lot of those were made retroactive. Different dates, with quite a few of them up to January.
So is this something they did in a different type of wording style in order to kind of slip it under the rug?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. In their own personnel policies and procedures, the executive managers and mid-managers are not eligible for step increases. Step is used as a terminology used within the bargaining units of the unions to bring people up to the top wage that's negotiated. In their own personnel policies and procedures, the mid-managers, managers, and executives receive their raises through promotions and merit raises. And the documentation we got for the first time across the board, they have step written next to the names and not merit or promotion.
What was your guys' raise supposed to be this year that you'd negotiated?
2%.
What do you want to see happen now?
Mikey?
Was it 3%?
3%.
3%, I'm sorry.
That's right.
Constantly decrease my raise to help the city. Professionals called and asked me what my opinion was because the city managers were telling us that we were looking at taking zero again next year and guaranteeing layoffs along with that zero. So I think that somebody needs to answer some questions. This isn't meant to be political or anything. This is just, I think people need to be aware of the fact that at a time when the city is trying budget issues, which we do believe, I mean, we've seen the numbers, we've seen the documentation, and it's important that the citizens come first. And that's why we exist. The police and the firefighters are here to serve the citizens of Dayton. And we want to do it, we want to do it in the safest way, we want to provide the safest service they can.